Hello everyone, welcome to Mastermind. So this is part 7 of the most important MCQ series which we were discussing. So in this also, let us discuss 5 very important questions. This video will be a little longer because we'll be discussing some of the most important topics with respect to economy. So more than the questions, here the topics will be very important. So every individual question will be covering very important topics from which the questions has been asked previously, because all these questions has been asked previously in the examination. So let us start with the basic one first. Socialistic pattern. So this socialistic pattern, whenever we are looking at socialistic pattern in the economy, it comes through free economy, mixed economy, public sector, or none of the above. So what is the answer over here? Here the answer is public sector. Here the answer is public sector. So whenever we are looking at economy, then broadly we can classify it into two types. One is capitalistic and socialistic. Here some of you might think that even free economy constitutes to be part of social economy, socialistic economy. But the right answer over here is public sector. We will understand why. In this part, let us look at the differences between capitalistic economy and socialistic economy. So usually whenever they are asking questions related to basics of economy, most of the times the question related to capitalistic or socialistic economy is very common, and it has been asked multiple times in the examination previously as well. That is, which of the following constitutes to be socialistic economy, which of the following constitutes to be capitalistic economy, something like that. On that lines, let us look at the differences between socialistic economy and capitalistic economy, so that it will be easier for us to answer that type of question. Now, there are various differences in between capitalistic and socialistic economy, from the motive of production, whatever is the role of government, the private sector, etc. But I'll tell you a simple trick in order to remember what is capitalistic and what is socialistic. So whenever you look at the word capitalistic, you remember it is with respect to profit making. The motive here is profit making. So whenever you look at the word capitalistic, you look at it as profit making. Whenever you look at the word socialistic, you look at it as welfare of people. So if you are providing welfare for the people, or if the answer is making, or the motive is welfare of the people, then it is socialistic. If the motive is profit making, then it is capitalistic economy. For example, let us say two industrialists start industries. Okay, two industrialists have started some industry. Okay, here the motive for them to start that industry itself is not welfare, because they have started industry in order to make profits. Correct? Any business usually is started in order to make profits itself. Correct? So if there are industrialists, then the motive itself is to make profits. But whenever you look at government, the motive of the government is welfare of the people. Here you can also link it with directive principle of state policy. You might have seen that multiple times the prelims question has been, which of the following constitutes to welfare of people, which of the following speaks about welfare of people. So in that the answer will be directive principle of state policy, because to get welfare for the people, to make welfare for the people itself is the motive for all the governments, and hence welfare of the people is the motive there. So I guess the basics over here is clear. Whenever we are looking at it as capitalistic economy, we are looking at profit making. Whenever we are looking at socialistic economy, we are looking at as welfare of the people. In economy, you might have also heard the phrase factors of production. Now what is this factors of production? So whenever you are looking at factors of production, you are looking at inputs for that business, inputs for any business is called as factors of production, because they are important factors in order to produce something. For example, the rent which goes for the factory is factor of production. The wages which goes into the factory is factors of production, which is the labor, it is factor of production. The capital and natural resources which are utilized constitutes to be factor of production, and from this the profits are made, which is the profit for that particular business. Okay, I hope you understood about factors of production. Factors of production is important because on the basis of factors of production, we will categorize capitalistic economy and socialistic economy initially. So, first one is factors of production. Now, what is factors of production? We have seen already. Now, if these factors of production are controlled by private entities, then it is capitalistic economy. Why it is controlled by private entities? Because private entities are into profit making, that we have seen already, correct? They control the factors, that is, they negotiate more, they might pay lesser labor, they might use better capital or better technology, because they want to produce more, because they want to make profits more. In case of socialistic pattern, these factors of production are controlled by government, and because of this only it is called as public. Okay, it is called as public sector. You might have also seen as public sector units, public sector banks, correct? For all those things, the factors of production are controlled by government, because there the motive itself is welfare. So I hope you have understood about factors of production. Next important factor is prices, determination of the prices. Okay, determination of prices. In case of capitalistic economy, because there is competition, and because there is profit making, let us imagine there are 3 factories which are producing same goods, then there will be immense competition between all these 3 in order to make the prices. So the least profit they'll be keeping in order to make the sale. So other thing which determines this is the demand side. Let us say these 3 factories only are there, but the demand is so high that even if all of them are keeping higher profits, they'll be making the sales, correct? So in that case also they'll be determining the prices. So we have seen that supply side also determines the price and demand side also determines the price in case of capitalistic economy, and hence the prices in case of capitalistic economy, it depends upon demand and supply. Now in case of socialistic pattern, how it should be determined? In case of socialistic pattern, the government only controls because it is under the government's supervision and government's control. I'll give you an example for this. Now when the COVID had started, the cost for N95 masks, which were nearly 5 rupees before, because of increase in demand at that point of a time, they had increased the prices to nearly 400 also for one mask. So you can see the motive here is profit making, because the demand is more, and even though the supply was there, because the supply was limited, even if they are selling it for higher price, people were buying that, and hence the costing was nearly 400. Then what did government do? Government had put this into essential commodities, and they had put the price slab also for this, that let us say 20 rupees is the maximum price at which you can sell. That is, this is the maximum price at which they can sell. At that point of a time, what happens? The person who is selling it for, let's say, 15 rupees makes more sales. If one person is selling it for 5 rupees, he'll be making even more sale. So whenever it comes to demand and supply, the prices are determined by the private entities because of demand and supply. because at that point of a time the motive there is profit making, and in case of public sector it is under control of the government. So determination of the price is under government's control, and in this case it is demand and supply. Now, when we were looking at this mask also, example N95 mask, is the production and distribution completely under the government? No. But why was it controlled whenever it was in profit making sector? It is because the role of government, okay, government role is very, very important. Then you might get confused that till now I was telling that government's role is complete in socialistic pattern and there was no government role in capitalistic economy. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen like that. It is not completely under the private sector, because we are looking at mixed economy over here. This is in case of India. Because this option will also be there in the multiple choice questions which they are giving. But if they are asking you in perspective of India, then it is mixed economy. If they are asking you solely capitalistic or solely socialistic economy, then you have to answer on the basis of that only, and hence depending upon that the answer will be correct or wrong. So in this case, in case of a capitalistic economy, the government's role is minimal. And because of that only, when we looked at N95 mask also, it will be regulated on the basis of the availability for the people and how important it is for the people. So it is not directly controlling. It is putting a few essential goods under the essential commodities for which the private sector also has to comply. Here it is minimal government interference, and here it is completely under the government. That is, here the factors of production which we have seen, or the production of goods and services and the distribution, it is under the government. In socialistic economy, the government has complete control over the production and distribution of goods and services. And in case of private sector, here private sector in capitalistic economy, it completely dominates. In role of socialistic economy, there is usually no role of in the production of goods and services, but usually the determination of all the things in socialistic pattern are done by the government itself. The government is in complete control, that is in the administrative complete control. And hence, because of that only, in case of capitalistic economy, there is immense competition. That because there are multiple businesses, there is immense competition. Here usually there is no competition. And government interferes into the sectors where the private sector will not be wanting to interfere into. For example, let us say defense, or let us say space. Usually in the economies, the private sector will not be interfering. I am telling it as usually because there are economies wherein there is private sector contribution also, private sector interference also. For example, in case of space, you can see that in India also nowadays there is lot of private sector which is coming up in the space. There is private sectors who are trying to get their satellites into the space. In case of let's say USA, there is SpaceX which is doing all those things as well. In case of a distribution of income, the distribution of income is unequal in case of capitalistic economy, whereas the distribution of income is more or less equal in case of socialistic economy when it comes to socialistic economic pattern. So I hope you have understood about the difference between capitalistic economy and socialistic economy. Next question: what is a scheduled bank? So look at the options over here. Here the trick, or one thing which you can go if you are knowing the basics in this, is that all the banking options are mentioning about some amount as deposits, but one is not mentioning. So in that case the answer is this. But if you have read about the basics of this also, then also you can reach for this particular option, which is a bank which is included in the second schedule of RBI. It is included in the second schedule of the RBI bank. Okay, because there are two types of bank. One is scheduled bank and non-scheduled bank. So scheduled bank are the ones which is included in the second schedule of RBI. Second schedule of RBI, and these are not included in the second schedule of RBI. Now this is very important for us to understand what are the different types of banks, that is scheduled and non-scheduled banks. What are the different conditions under them, what are the different rules under them, what are the different details under them. Okay, we'll look at that now. And here the answer is B. A bank included in the second schedule of the RBI is a scheduled bank. Let us look at the basics of banking first. Now, basics of banking. What are banks? Banks, as we know, are intermediaries. Okay, banks are intermediaries. Okay, and we know how does bank work. That we are there, that is the public is there, and let us say they will deposit some money in this particular bank. They will deposit some money in this particular bank, and for which the bank will be paying interest to them. The bank will be paying interest to them. How does bank earn that revenue? By lending it. By giving the loan, by creating assets, etc. And there also they'll be charging the interest. For example, for the deposit, if they are providing, let us say 2%, this is just an example, 2% interest rate, then if they have to make revenue out of it, then they have to lend it at, let's say, 4%, 5%, 6%, because whatever is the remaining amount, in that they have to run that whole bank and provide the interest to the customers. So this whole thing is controlled by whom? This whole thing is controlled by RBI. So in between RBI and people, in between RBI, which is the central bank, and people, there is intermediaries, and these are called as banks. These are called as banks. And by being intermediaries, what do they ensure? They ensure that there is circulation. There is circulation of money in the economy. There is circulation of money in the economy, and depending upon this only, depending upon the banks only, with the help of bank only, RBI will be controlling the money supply with the public. RBI will be controlling the money supply with public. Here you have to remember that I'm mentioning about RBI controlling the money supply with the public, because there are two types of policies. One is monetary policy, and the other one is fiscal policy. Monetary policy and fiscal policy. You remember it as like this. Whenever it comes as fiscal, you consider it as government control. Whenever it is monetary, you consider it as RBI's control. You consider it as RBI's control. Monetary policy is RBI control, fiscal policy is government control. So with the help of this monetary policy, RBI will be controlling the money supply in the market, which is the public. So this is the basic of banking. Now we have seen that there are three constituents over here. One is RBI, the other one is banks, and the other one is public. Now what is RBI? RBI. Every country has a central monetary authority, which is called as banker of all the banks. So central monetary authority. In case of India, the central monetary authority is RBI. Central Monetary Authority of India is RBI. Now what RBI does? The main thing is it keeps the reserves. Of banks. It keeps the reserves of banks. Now one question may arise. Why should Reserve Bank of India or RBI has to keep the reserves of the bank? For example, let us say this is the bank and this is RBI. Now the same example which we had seen before, that we have deposited amount in the bank, correct? I have deposited 50 rupees and you have deposited, let's say, 50 rupees. So the total money with the bank, this is just an example, okay? The total money with the bank is 100. Now for this, they have to be giving interest also, which is 2 rupees. For me, they have to give 1 rupees, and for you also, they have to give 1 rupees. Now they have to make this revenue also, right? Now what happens? They will make revenue by lending that. Let us say they have lent this 100 rupees to a person, say B, for his industry. to for his industry for let's say 4% interest, for let's say 4% interest, correct? Now they have to be lending this money to us. Now whole 100 rupees they have lent it to C. Now suddenly what happens is, one day you go to the bank and you demand 50 rupees back, okay, because you have kept it into your savings account and you are like, I want this whole amount back. Now the bank is not having that amount, correct, because they have already lent it and they are just getting the principal and interest. Now at that point of a time they are having that deficiency, right? They are not having that amount. And to handle such a situation, at that point of a time, what you might say, you might come to me and say that, okay, I had kept this money, they are not giving this money to me, it is my amount only that they are not giving. And that point of a time I might panic because my money also will be stuck. So at that point of a time there will be panic among the public. And to avoid such a situation, there are a lot of regulation which bank RBI sets for the bank in order to keep reserves. To handle such situation, RBI makes the banks keep reserves. In the reserve situation, we'll understand about that in further MCQs, or when we are discussing about the monetary policy tools, the quantitative tools, the qualitative tools, etc. So with the help of those reserves, the RBI controls the money supply also. So these reserves are kept with the banks, and this was established in 1935 with the RBI Act of 1934. RBI Act of 1934 that established Reserve Bank of India in 1935. Most important thing is, this is fully owned. This is fully owned by Government of India itself. This is fully owned by Government of India itself. Okay, so I hope you have understood about Reserve Bank of India. Now, Reserve Bank of India, it categorizes two types of bank. One is scheduled bank. One is scheduled bank, and the other one is non-scheduled bank. Non-scheduled bank, which we have seen also. Scheduled bank and non-scheduled bank. Now, scheduled bank are the ones about whom it is mentioned in the Schedule 2nd of RBI Act. Second schedule of RBI Act. These are not mentioned in second schedule of RBI Act. This is the basic difference. This is the basic difference in between scheduled bank and non-scheduled bank. Now, if they are mentioned in the Schedule 2, that means they are regulated very well under RBI. They are regulated very well under RBI. Under this, you have the commercial banks. Under scheduled bank, you have commercial bank. So you call it as scheduled commercial banks, correct? So what are these scheduled commercial banks? These are public sector banks, which is your SBI. Example, SBI. Then you have private sector bank, which is, let's say, your HDFC, ICICI, etc. Then you have foreign banks. Now, what are foreign banks? Foreign banks are the ones, for example, HSBC, and then SCB, etc. are foreign banks. And foreign banks are the ones whose headquarters is in other country. The headquarter is in other country. That is why they are called as foreign banks. Headquarters is in other country, and hence they are called as foreign banks. Now, next one, foreign banks. Then there is RRBs, regional rural banks, and then there is NABARD. These are all under, and then there is others, etc. Others. These are under commercial banks. Now, what are RRBs? In this, 75% of the credit, whatever they are lending, they have to lend it to rural and agriculture itself, and they cannot lend it to corporates. So these are under the scheduled banks. Now, in case of non-scheduled bank, we saw that they are not under Schedule 2nd of RBI Act. Then where are they? They are usually mentioned or registered under Societies Act. They are mentioned under Societies Act. So 1860 or the amended Societies Act 2013, etc. So they are mentioned under Societies Act. So these are the differences between the scheduled bank and the non-scheduled bank. So in case of scheduled bank, it is mentioned under the Schedule 2, and because they are listed under the Schedule 2, they have to maintain the cash reserve ratio. So whatever cash reserve ratio which is said, they have to maintain this cash reserve ratio with that of Reserve Bank of India itself. They have to maintain this cash reserve ratio with Reserve Bank of India itself. Okay, and they are authorized to take funds from Reserve Bank of India. They are authorized, and because they are mentioned under the RBI Act, they are authorized to take the or borrow the funds from Reserve Bank of India, and they are considered more stable. They are considered more stable than the non-scheduled bank. And in case of non-scheduled bank, you can write as opposite things. Okay, in this case, the CRR or the cash reserve ratio is maintained with that bank itself. Whatever bank, whatever non-scheduled bank that is, they are maintaining the cash reserve ratio with themselves. Okay, and there is no such condition which has to be fulfilled in case of non-scheduled bank, because they are not mentioned under the second schedule. Okay, and they are more risky. They are more risky in nature. They are more risky in nature. I'll tell you one very important point. I'll tell you one very important point with respect to scheduled bank. What is the paid up capital? How much is the paid up capital to have a scheduled bank? How much is the paid up capital to have scheduled bank? The paid up capital here is rupees 5 lakh. Very, very important. You might get confused in the examination. They have a paid up capital of 5 lakh or more. So the minimum is 5 lakh in order to comply with all the requirements of Reserve Bank of India. And such a paid up capital regulation is not there in case of non-scheduled bank. Such is not there in case of non-scheduled bank. And non-scheduled bank usually cannot borrow from Reserve Bank of India because they are not mentioned under the Reserve Bank of India Act. So I hope you have understood about the basics of banking. I hope you have understood about the basics of banking. Let's discuss the third question. Let this be last question because I know it has been a really long video, but the basics, to understand the basics, it was very important, and hence the length of the video was a little long. So periodic labor force survey, PLFS. This is conducted by whom? This is conducted by NSO. This is conducted by NSO. Okay, what is NSO for us over here? This is National Statistics Office. Now before NSO there was NSSO. NSSO was National Sample Survey Office, and there was CSO also, which was Central Statistics Office, National Sample Survey Office and Central Statistics Office, and both of these were under Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, MOSPI. You call it as MOSPI, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Under this there was NSSO and CSO. Now in 2019, what they did is, in 2019 they merged both of this. That is, NSSO and CSO were merged together and formed NSO, which is your National Statistics Office. National Statistics Office. Okay, so now whatever were the work which were done by NSSO and CSO are done by National Statistics Office itself. So which were two wings, it was made into one wing. Okay, so I hope you have understood about this. In the next part, we'll discuss a few more important questions. The series is called as Top 50, but you have to remember that we are discussing 50 very, very important topics. So in each question, you might have understood about at least one topic. It may be related to economy or polity or any other topics as such. So I hope you have understood about this, and I hope you are liking the series, and I hope this will be beneficial for you, and the questions will come from this particular series as well. So in the next part, let us see you. Thank you.